everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of my knitting podcast. I am Jess and I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. I just wanted to say before I start sharing my FOs and whips and everything else, thank you so much for everyone who's subscribed. Like, there's 40 subscribers at the moment on my channel, and thank you for your support. And everyone who's commented and followed me on Instagram, thank you for all of your support. I am jess.knits.sews on Instagram if you're interested in seeing pictures of my finished objects and other things that I'm working on at the moment. Today I am wearing the Indira Pullover by Anjali. So this is a test knit that I did for her new pattern. It's going to be released today on 11th of September. And so this was knitted on fingering weight yarn. And I used yarn from Bendigo Woolen Mills, of course, because it's, one of my favorites and probably the most economical. I had 2 big balls of Bendigo Woolen Mills in the color, I want to say lavender or possibly lilac. Can't remember for the main color. And for the contrasting color, I used soft blush. So this was leftover that I had used for another sweater that I made, and it's a color work sweater. It was the Anasha sweater by Jen Steingass, and I used the soft blush color as the main color for this sweater, and I still had more than half a ball of the yarn, so I decided to use that and incorporate it into this sweater. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I get to use something that I already had. And also, I love that I kind of had a matching accessory already. Like, hello, don't you love it when you're like, oh, it just conveniently matches. These were earrings that I got ages ago from, I believe it was the Finders Keepers market that they have in Melbourne every year, but obviously because of COVID, we haven't been able to do that, which is a little bit sad because I love going and seeing, meeting new makers, sell their awesome crafts and stuff. So, but yeah, it matches. I'm really happy with that. All right, so in this episode, I'm actually pretty dang excited because I finished like a few things. Before I get into all the other stuff, I should mention that, so this particular sweater, would I recommend to a beginner? Yes, I probably would. What I did learn that was new in this sweater, well, there are definitely German short rows. That's something I've already done before in other sweaters. It just makes sure that the back is higher than the front, so it sits nicely around your neck. It's also got little baubles. I don't know if you can see them around here, little baubles, and it's got like that nice little texture here, little zigzag texture underneath the color work, and then a little bit more zigzag and baubles on the top here. You can also see the sleeves has a little bit of color work for an accent, which is really cute. The sides are sort of like there's like a faux seam going on the side, and it's got like a split hem at the bottom. Sorry, I'm not showing this very well because I'm kneeling on my couch. But yeah, so these are the features of this sweater. Initially, I tried to do a size 3 because my bust circumference is 34 inches, and I figured that was the right size for me. But as I was increasing towards the body section, I made a mistake in the number of increases I was supposed to make, and I ended up with the amount of stitches for a size 2. So that's why I think it was supposed to have more ease and more of like a boxy fit initially. So if you want to look at Anjali's original design, I will pop her Instagram tag on the screen. It's supposed to be a little bit boxy and probably a little bit longer than this, but overall, I'm quite happy with the fit. I do like a more fitted and less of an ease for my sweaters because I find that it keeps me a lot warmer when it's closer to my body. But obviously, everybody has different preferences. I will link down below to the Ravelry link to her pattern. So hopefully by the time I publish this video, it's already published online. But I definitely recommend this pattern. It was fairly easy to read. There is a chart for the color work. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. Another thing I should note was there was German short rows on the back and also underneath the sleeve, which I did not do because I don't know, I find just German short rows on the back is fine for me, but German short row elsewhere I find can be just a little bit tedious, so I kind of skipped the German short row part underneath the sleeve, although I would say it would probably benefit you in terms of kind of not having the side of the body of the sweater right up so much when you lift your arms. So that's the only thing I would note, but I'm pretty happy with it overall. Okay, so next finished object is the Ranunculus. Yes, so I will try and show you maybe a video or a picture of me wearing this. So I decided to do it in the long sleeve version, as you can see. And I also did the I-cord bind off. At first I had made a mistake when I was doing the sleeves because first of all, I didn't try it on to check whether it was the right length for my wrist, and it kind of ended like 3/4 of the way, and I also didn't read the pattern closely, so I didn't decrease the stitches for the I-cord bind off, so I ended up having like this floppy bell sleeve situation, which I was totally not into. But the hard thing so I knitted this with a lace weight yarn and mohair. The hard thing with mohair is when you've made a mistake and you try to like unravel it, it is a nightmare because it's very hairy and it sticks together, like it can get stuck pretty easily. So what I actually had to do, which was kind of a little bit scary and made me very nervous, I actually cut off the I-cord bind off where I made a mistake, and I kind of unraveled a few rows and then put through the needle through the stitches again and then continued on from there because I really tried to unravel it and just really wasn't working out for me. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with this. This was knitted with Manos del Uruguay merino lace in the colorway Holly. That's H-O-L-I, not with a Y, with an I. And it's this beautiful sort of neon pinkish color, and also it's got hints of like light blue in it, some orange and purples. As you can see, it's quite a beautiful color actually. And I've held it together with mohair from Rowan Kid Silk. I don't know what the colorway is, but it's this kind of bright, hot pink color. So I would say that because it is like this bright hot pink color with like a fairly variegated sort of color changing yarn, the mohair actually puts it all together and kind of blends in the whole color so that it looks really cohesive, which I really love. And also I've never knitted with mohair held together with anything before because, well, my reasoning is it gets expensive really quickly. So for an average sweater for my size, normally I would need about like 3 skeins of fingering weight yarn and possibly with 3 skeins of matching mohair. And if you buy hand-dyed yarn, that could, you know, get expensive fairly quickly. But the wonderful thing about the Ranunculus is you use such big needles. So I used 6mm needles as the pattern recommended. And I think it's 5mm for the I-cord bind off at the end. And it's quite gapey, but the mohair kind of makes it less gapey. But I only had one skein of the Manos del Uruguay. It was 800 meters per skein because it's this like really fine lace weight yarn. And I used 3 balls of 25 grams each of the Rowan Kid Silk. So overall, it wasn't super expensive because you don't actually need to have a lot of yarn to actually make the Ranunculus. And even better, if you don't want to do long sleeves, you would actually only need probably 1 skein of fingering weight or lace weight yarn plus 1 skein if it's like, you know, one of the 100 grams, 420 meters, 400 meters skein of mohair. So you need 1 skein of each to make a sleeveless Ranunculus. Speaking of which, if you live in Australia, you would know last weekend was the big wool show. And on Saturday, I logged on and I had internet problems all of a sudden. So I missed out on like a fair bit on the first day. And some of the things I think I wanted to buy was already sold out come Sunday when my internet went back up. But I did make some purchases. I bought 1 skein of mohair from Chloe from Wool and Works. And it's this nice purple, sort of with hints of like pink and other colors in there, mohair. And I am planning to make another Ranunculus with the same color yarn that I have here, the fingering weight, purple with that to make sort of a short sleeve Ranunculus because summer is coming up and I feel like that'd be something that I would wear, not summer, spring, sorry, something that I could wear in the spring in Melbourne because even though it's spring, it gets pretty windy here. So I do want something that's kind of still nice and, you know, furry and fluffy, but not overly warm. I would have to say that I am quite surprised with this combination of yarn and how warm it actually is, because if you actually like hold it and fold it, it like weighs nothing at all. It's just really fluffy and squidgy. But I was wearing it the other day just at home while I was knitting something else just to try it on because I was, you know, proud of myself. I finished something and I got quite hot. So yeah, like I'm surprised at how effective it is at keeping you warm despite the fact that the gauge is pretty loose. Like you can pretty much like see through it. There's like those little holy bits, like it's not a tight gauge. Another thing I should note is I did not meet gauge with the 6mm needle as according to the pattern, but I kind of just winged it because I thought to myself, look, it's like there's a lot of ease in the pattern and I kind of wanted it to be sort of more fitting to my body, and it worked out fine. So there it is. And today I am drinking, oh, it's so nice. This is T2's Milky Oolong tea, and it's one of my favorites. I love it so much. I actually started drinking this tea as I was watching Selma Knits from Little Big Knits podcast, and she was drinking a milky oolong tea, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that tastes like. I've never had a milky oolong, and obviously I found a milky oolong tea from T2, and it's lovely. It's kind of like, it tastes sort of like a green tea, but it's got like a nice rich buttery like flavor or feel to it, even though there's no actual dairy in it, like milky, I think is to describe maybe the taste and the texture, even though there's not any actual milk in it. So it's a pretty interesting one. I would totally recommend you try it. And the mug is from Mary Meko. I love this mug because it's huge. If it's a lot of tea, so this is usually what I drink from when I'm knitting. Yeah. Oh, I did also mention, I think in my last episode, about using scrap yarn to make accessories. And I was talking about the Manos de Uruguay silk blend that I had that was used in my Anasha sweater, and that I used them to make earrings, except I can't find the other one. I swear I put it in this bag. Oh, here it is. So, honestly, how cute are these? Isn't that just adorable? So, all I had to do really was use a fork. So I had a fork, and I wrapped it around the fork, the yarn around the fork, until I thought it was thick enough to make a pom-pom. And if you imagine this is the fork, just go with it. So you would wrap the yarn around the fork that way. And then after you're finished, you would wrap a different, you cut off the side, and then you wrap a different piece of yarn around all that wrapping of yarn, and then you tie it in the middle tight like a pom-pom, and then you just cut it off the sides, and then you shape it into a pom-pom. And you, what I did was I bought some supplies from Spotlight that were these little tiny, you know, hooks for earrings, and the little chain, and like there's like a little tiny jump hoop in the middle that I used. So I used little tiny sort of like these jewelry tool pliers to open the hooks, and then attach the jump hoops in the inside and on the top towards this earring hook thing. I don't know what they're called. Not a jeweler. But yeah, they were a pretty fun make, and I use them all the time. They're so much fun. And yeah, I feel like these colors match. Ooh, I like that combo. So yeah, I would totally recommend if you just have like really tiny bits of scrap lying around, like it doesn't take much at all to make these, but you do kind of need to grab supplies for jewelry, like the chains and the jump hoops and everything else, and pliers. So you do need to purchase more things to make them, but I would highly recommend it, and I wear these like all the time. Love them to bits. So yeah. All right, what else do we have? Yes, socks. All right, let's get into it. So these are the Garia socks. Last time I showed you one finished pair, and then the other one was only knitted up to the foot. I finished both of them, and I'll pop in a picture of me wearing these. I made the smaller size because I do have pretty small sized feet, and the yarn is Melbourne City Dye Works in the colorway Bunny Hop. So I really love like the colors. It's got like this sort of nice teal with hints of pink and purple in it. And yeah, I just can't wait to wear these with like a cute pair of sparkly blue Mary Janes that I have, because I feel like they'd go so well. And they do fit very well. I would have to note though that this sock has a German short row heel, which I had never done before. I've done short rows and sweaters and stuff, but not necessarily in socks. And I don't know what it was with kind of the double stitch on the knit side that I can never get quite right. So it ended up having kind of holes sort of, well, not holes, just like a lot of gaps in between the double stitches, and I kind of had to go back in there when I was finished, and kind of, you can probably see it here with extra piece of yarn to cover those holes. You can see it more here as well. I did it on the other side just to really reinforce it. So it's definitely something that I need to perfect. I don't know how to do it with the best technique yet, so I'm gonna have to go on YouTube and watch more videos on how people do that. But so far, when I've made the vanilla socks for my husband, I used like the heel flap and gusset technique, and I liked that more because it was really tight and there were no gaps. So I don't know if I could probably maybe next time change the sort of construction and just do a heel flap instead. But overall, I'm pretty happy with these. These are the Garia Socks by Erica Lopez, I believe, from the 52 Weeks of Sock book. And yeah, I'm excited to make more socks from it. So that's the socks. Next up, what else did I make? Oh, okay. So this was a bit of a random one. So I made a beanie. Yes, I know the colors don't match. So this was part of my sort of stash busting moment. I found a half knitted beanie up to here in my stash. And it just kind of was half knitted for a long while and was just left there in my box of abandoned projects. And next to it was this leftover ball of yarn of the Abbey Road Wool to Wild, Wild to Wool, I can't remember the name of the yarn. I'll pop it on the screen. But it was really similar in color, and I didn't really notice that that wasn't the same yarn that I used for the bottom, because now that I'm thinking back, this yarn on the bottom, I don't even know what it was, but I went on a trip with my friends. I believe it was to Phillip Island, and I saw a little yarn shop, and I was like, "Woo, I'm gonna get some yarn, and maybe I'll just knit it on the way." And so I bought also a circular needle for it, and it was 6 millimeters that I used for the body, and I think the bottom was maybe the same, or maybe it was like a 5.5 millimeter needle. And I knitted a hat for my friend, which I had already given away, but then I still had leftover, so I knitted another hat for myself, but I only had enough to go up to here. To be honest, like, I could probably, like, if I didn't want a rolled rib, I could probably just stop right there and that would be it. But I don't know, yeah, so I found that random ball of yarn and just knit it away, and I recognize that the color is different, but look, to be honest, like, if I were to wear it, unless, well, a lot of people are actually taller than me because I'm quite a short person. I'm like 5'2", so they could probably look at the top of my head and recognize it's a different color. But if you're just looking at me like front facing, it's not like you can really see the color difference. I mean, is it really that bad? You guys tell me. I don't know. I'm planning to make a pom-pom as well for it on the top, with obviously the only leftover yarn that I have from this top color, so maybe that'll kind of pull it all together. But I don't mind so much. It is pretty chunky yarn. I would say that it's probably Aran weight. I didn't use a pattern for this. I definitely just winged it. Yeah, so it fits nicely. I'm pretty happy with it. If I unrolled the rib, kind of gives me more of like a slouchy beanie look, which I don't mind. I like it. I'm gonna keep it and add a pom-pom to it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that I actually used something from my stash and kind of finished an abandoned project. Yeah, so that's all of my finished objects. I felt like a boss, honestly, this week because I finished 2 sweaters and a sock and a hat. That's like 4 things in a week. But obviously I didn't start the projects this week. Like this sweater took me 5 weeks all up, which is pretty quick considering. But I had to knit every day, maybe for like 4 hours during the weekday, every day, and maybe 8 hours on the weekends, every weekend. So it took a long time, but because it was a test knit and the first test knit that I've ever done, I was really committed to finishing the deadline. And I did. I finished like a week earlier from the deadline. It took me 5 weeks, although I anticipated in my mind, I thought I was going to take 3 to 4 weeks. So it did take longer than I thought, but I started early enough so that I could actually finish the deadline, which I'm pretty happy about. And Anjali, if you're watching this, thank you so much for allowing me to test knit your pattern. I loved it. And yeah, thank you. Now, moving on to the things that I've casted on. So excited. The joy of just casting on new projects. All right, so this is a shawl that I'm making. You can see there's like little eyelets there and all these changing colors like the dark blues and light purple and cream and a little bit of green. I love it so much. This is a pattern of the Imagine When scarf by Hohi Locatelli. She's actually having a sale for her patterns at the moment until the 19th of September. So go onto her Instagram and check out her posts because she's provided a code there for her patterns. And the reason why I chose this pattern was because I was having one of those moments where I was really intrigued by a color and I only bought one skein and didn't really know what I was going to make with it. I think I thought about making another ranunculus with it, but then changed my mind. So this is from Manos del Uruguay. It is 100% merino superwash. So this is Alma, their 3-ply light fingering yarn in the colorway Resilience. So I would say that if you have a look at Manos del Uruguay Alma, all of their colorways have really nice names. Like there's generosity, persistence, and faith, and all these like really beautiful sentiments. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, it's just really nice. And I guess the whole idea is, you know, when I wear the shawl, I would think about, you know, that word resilience, and I don't know, it's just a nice sentiment. So yeah, I honestly have never knitted like a shawl of this shape before. I'm more of like a infinity shawl and just cowls and, you know, garter stitch or ribbing type of person. So this is something very different to me that I've never knitted before, and I'm excited to have a nice lightweight shawl that I would wear with a lot of my outfits and dresses. And I feel like this is very trans-seasonal, again, because spring is coming up in Melbourne. No, wait, I think it's already actually spring. No, yeah, it's definitely spring right now. It's just something nice that's light that I can wear with a lot of different things. And I've learned new things from this pattern already. So this is called a picot edge. If you can see sort of like the little tiny pups here at the edge that adds like a little bit of texture. That's something that I've never done before, but I hear it's done a lot on shawls. So yeah, I've learned something new there. And I'm excited to see it grow. It's been a pretty fast knit. I only just started this week. yeah, so I'll let you know how that goes. Better put this little label back inside the middle before I forget what it actually is. All right, what else do I have? Okay, so this is, I've only done the ribbing section of this. Oh, actually, why don't I just get the book? Hold on, uno momento. I am back. So I am knitting a pattern from Kimmy Hargreaves' book, Form. So I discovered Kimmy Hargreaves from Fruity Knitting on their podcast, and I thought, wow, like she's got really nice, like very modern designs that I feel like look very, they're very chic. It looks like something you would buy from a store, and it looks like something from Witchery or something like that. So I really do love her designs. Let me just show you the one that I'm making. I'll just show you some of the, so like it's very like nice, simple patterns. They're very, you know, versatile. It's something that you would wear like to work or, you know, on a weekend. So it's really, really beautiful patterns. Kimmy Hargreaves is a Rowan designer, so a lot of the yarn recommended is definitely from the Rowan yarns. Oh my god, I can't find the sweater that I'm making. Oh, here it is. So it's this beautiful, oh, don't know if you can see it. Try to keep the sheen away. Pattern from her book called The Model Sweater. And it's got cables on there. And yeah, I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. Or otherwise, maybe I'll try to show a picture of it, maybe somewhere on the screen. But I noticed, I know like a lot of people don't like to knit with black because it's really hard to see the stitches. And once you're done, it's kind of not very easy to see the stitch definition and all the intricate designs on the sweater. But I actually find that for work, even though I'm working from home most of the time, I tend to use black a lot. I love to wear black and have like red lipstick on. It's kind of like the vibe that I'm really digging at the moment. So I wanted to knit myself a black sweater. And the yarn that I'm using is, again, Bendigo Woolen Mills in the luxury 8-ply, so it's DK weight. And the construction of this sweater, unfortunately, is bottom up and also it's not knitted in the round, so I'll have to knit 4 parts, front, back, and left, right sleeves separately, and then seam them all together. But you know what? I don't mind. I don't think I mind that so far. I think it does give it a different look and sort of like a different, more structured look to the sweater. So I did think about changing or rewriting the pattern to knit it in the round, but it was kind of a bit too complicated for me. And because I haven't really knit a lot of cable sweaters, I just felt like that was a bit too brave. So maybe once I get the hang of actually knitting cables on this sweater, maybe my next project I might have more confidence to actually knit in the round or rewrite a pattern to be knitted in the round. But yeah, so far just on the ribbing. I'm actually planning to maybe do the front and back together. I actually have like a connector for my interchangeable needles that would kind of make it longer so I can knit both at the same time. So I think I might try and do that and knit the front and the back at the same time because they're the same pattern up until you kind of do the sleeve bit. So it's probably what I'm gonna do, and maybe try and knit the sleeves 2 at a time, so that saves me more time. But yeah, that's all I really have for today. Oh, and I also wanted to say, recently I've discovered a lot of Australian knitting podcasters here on the internet of things, and it's so lovely. So Oliphant Kat, if you don't already follow her, on Instagram, and she's also on YouTube. She does podcasts and tutorials. She is a knitwear designer, and also she is a teacher as well. She has a lot of lots of really useful tutorials on her YouTube. Yeah, I've connected with her recently through Instagram, and she's kind of introduced me to a lot of other Australian podcasters, and it's so lovely. I've met Madeline, or Maddie, from About Ewe. I'll put her Instagram handle on the screen, and also in the description box below if you want to follow her. She's currently having like a knit along as well, to challenge everyone to, I think, try and do a technique that they've never done before. So it's called the hashtag Mad About You challenge, I believe. Yeah, so look her up. She's really lovely. She's currently doing like a brioche shawl, which is amazing. And it's really tempted me to want to try and do brioche, which I haven't done, but maybe after I finish my whips. I've also discovered Mel from Down Under Dyer. She's a yarn hand dyer, and she's got really lovely, beautiful colored yarns in her Etsy shop. She's really lovely as well. And also Allie from Fibre Bound. She's also got a podcast here on YouTube. She knits a lot of different things like colorwork sweaters and socks, which is totally my jam, so I love watching her podcast. And yeah, Kat, if you're watching, thank you so much for, introducing me to all these lovely Aussie podcasters. It's been so lovely, and I think it's so nice to see or watch other Australian podcasters. So when they talk about the yarn or the tools that they use, it's something that I would have access to here in Australia, and it just makes such a huge difference, because I do often find I get suggestions of podcasts from knitting podcasters from the UK and the US, and it's lovely. It's just sometimes I get major yarn envy, and I really want the yarn that they're using in their knitted sweaters or socks, and I just can't really find them here in Australia, because you add up shipping and it's exuberantly expensive, and you just end up not doing it. So I always try and find substitutes that are similar, but finding other Australian podcasters, it's always just so nice to see what they're working on, what yarn they're using, and thinking, oh, I could totally save that and purchase it at some point, because it's a yarn dyer that's here in Australia, which is great. Speaking of which, I am still waiting on a lot of different things in the mail, so hopefully they'll arrive at some point soon. I recently ordered some Chiaogoo interchangeable needle set from Yarn Trader. They've got an online shop. They've got like quite an extensive collection of yarn from a lot of sort of yarns that you wouldn't normally be able to get here in Australia, like head shop fibers, or yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Jameson and Smith, I believe they also have their yarn, so they stock a lot of yarn that is hard to get here in Australia, which is really lovely. But as you would probably already know, if you're living in Australia, Ozpost is having some issues at the moment. So from 2 weeks ago, the status is still saying it's being prepared, which means the shop has already shipped the item, but I don't think Ozpost has picked it up yet. But I'm really keen to get new needles, because the needles that I currently have, like, they're fine. I just ordered the cheap set from Amazon, because at the time I was just starting to think about knitting more, but I didn't really maybe want to invest $200 straight up front for a set of tools that I didn't really know if I was going to invest a lot of time doing. But now that I'm knitting a lot of sweaters and I'm really getting into it, I do want to invest in tools that are actually more ergonomic and better quality. So again, if you're just starting your sort of knitting journey and you don't know what interchangeable needle sets to get, if you have some extra cash and you do want to invest in a really good set of interchangeable knitting needles, I would definitely recommend Chiaogoo. And if you ask any knitter who's done it for a while, they would probably say the same thing. It's the one that a lot of people rave about and is, you know, probably like top-notch, highest quality. But if you're like me and you don't want to invest in tools that are a bit expensive in the beginning because you don't really know if you're going to commit to it. So I got needles from Amazon. So these are the interchangeable needles I got from Amazon. Maybe I'll show you the set if you're interested in the next episode. But I've knitted so many sweaters and so many items from them. I wouldn't say no issues. Like, it definitely works. So you kind of attach the needles and you screw them on. Here there's like a little hole where you kind of put like a pin through and then you screw it on so that it's tight. But I do find that the sort of cables, they're strong, but they're a bit tough sometimes and not really flexible. So that makes it a little bit challenging sometimes when I'm knitting a lot and I'm knitting a sweater and it just kind of goes all weird and bendy, and sometimes it makes my wrists do weird things and it hurts my hands. So if I'm going to be knitting a lot, I don't really want to use something that might, you know, cause like wrist pain or anything like that. And I find that when you're knitting with needles that are 3.5 millimeters upwards, it's fine. But I find that when it's smaller needles, like these ones are, I believe they're like 3.25 millimeters, and when you're using fingering weight yarn, you can see the joints aren't smooth here. So sometimes I find myself tugging with it a lot and just kind of moving the stitches along, and that kind of slows down my knitting process. So, I mean, they only cost $50 in the beginning, and it was needle sizes anywhere from, it's a pretty complete set, like 3 millimeters to maybe like 7-8 millimeters, maybe more. Can't remember. I'll show a link to it down below. And it definitely served its purpose. Like, I would still keep them and use them, but it's definitely not the most ergonomic. So yeah, hoping my new needles will come soon. Anyways, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. It really means a lot, and you know, I've reached 40 subscribers from my first video, which, you know, kind of blows my mind that there are people out there that are willing to support me. You know, I've only made one video, but yeah, it really means a lot. So thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely weekend and happy knitting. Bye.